Persona 5 Royal is magical. Rated M for masterpiece. Perhaps it's just the optimist in me, but I believe that Persona 5 Royal is the most inspiring video game ever made. A bright, shining beacon of hope, showing that through determination, with a little help from friends, you can change the future. But you can't change the past. It's hard to imagine that a human being could be more inspired by a video game than when Life Will Change begins to play. Consider where you are and what's happening the first time you hear it, even if you don't truly listen to the lyrics until the first climax during the casino. The beat resembles a heartbeat, powerful and poised, as you and your teenage outcasts and magical cat infiltrate the inner mind of a child abuser in order to show him the error of his ways, knowing well that only you can stop him now, and you know that life will change. We feel as united as the characters in doing justice. Persona 5 Royal is one of the most life-affirming stories ever told. It's the sum of all of the lessons we've learned about interactive storytelling, a simulation of life as a dream, a lucid vision encompassing the indulgence of our imaginations, along with the greater nature of our beings and the moral choices we make. A 100-hour experience. Unlike anything in the medium of video games, Persona 5 Royal might move slow, but that is only because the game wants you to take your time as you develop a beautiful friendship with the Phantom Thieves, and through them, discover more about yourself, wondering in the end how a video game could take your heart. Gorgeously gushing with flash and feeling, Persona 5 shows us a trick of perspective. A beguiling balance between the lighthearted and lyrical notions of youth, the effervescence of adolescence, against the heavy implications of impermanence and the temptations of corruption encountered as we come of age. On the surface, Persona 5 Royal is as fun as any game ever made. Its depths reach deep into the heart of the human condition. Existing between dream and reality, mind and matter, Persona 5 Royal seems all too familiar, but also strangely mystifying. It's like every game we've ever played and none of them simultaneously. The story and its characters evolve to change shapes and add colors to the chameleon, like the faces framed in the hero's portraits that glow with lifelike expressions mixed with the surreal qualities of the artist's conception. Director Ito, maestro-composer Shoji Meguro, and the artist extraordinaire Shigenori Sojima combine their talents to ensure the universal appeal and accessibility of Persona 5 Royal. But they obscure the true meaning of the story by fusing the duality of satire and sincerity, substance and style, so that, to an untrained eye, they are almost indistinguishable.
The world will shine brightly as long as you hold hope in your heart.
Persona 5 Royal is arguably the most philosophical game ever made. Hear me out. Not because it vaguely poses deep questions, but because it actively engages in dialogue with the player about established quality of life problems that are universal to us, namely, the existential crisis of free will. We are paradoxically condemned to be free, as the fellow once said, and as the song eloquently rings out to us. Our burden of boundless freedom to make our own choices and forge our identities is a difficult thing to comprehend, a scary world awaiting us outdoors. But we must go out there and be. The Phantom Thieves live life so urgent, afraid of their own shadows, angry with adults because they see themselves as the victims of their cruelty. But there's a revelation that dawns on them later in the story. All of us are necessarily playing God to one another, forcing our views and influencing ways of life on each other on a daily basis. We are like the authors of our own plays, reducing other people to participants in our drama. Our desires and our goals often conflict.
If I were like you, things would be so much better.
Competition forsakes cooperation and unity.
Wait up!
Teammates! Friends! To hell with that! Why am I inferior to you?
We're on.
The ideal and the real.
Feeling okay?
Made up my mind. I will see my justice through.
Maybe the most inspiring thing I've ever seen in a game or in any media is when the Phantom Thieves confront the false god of control and reject mental slavery and the allure of an easy life. The god of control is the manifestation of the status quo that wishes to impose their greed and corruption, etc., on their fellow humans, juxtaposed with the desires of the innocent and the meager. The false god is born out of the public's cognition, an appeal for order and justice, a desire to end pain and struggle that takes the form of omnipotent guidance with the power to extinguish the expectations that govern both sides of the spectrum of morality, so that no one can be disappointed by failing to measure up to what they think they should be. On one level, it sounds nice, but it's a world of fungible assets offering no room for personal development, no room for anyone to have a persona. Existentialism asserts that existence precedes essence, or that man makes himself. The existence of God is not only considered to be imaginary, but also impossible. The synthesis of the I, subjective personality, with the am, objective eternal perfection, is self-contradictory. It is fitting that in Persona 5, the god of control is labeled as the demiurge, or false god, as in the world outside of video games, there is no god. Or if there is, then God is a cosmic authoritarian, depriving us of our independence, and so we must take up the wings of rebellion. This is the bold message of Persona 5 Royal. There is no God. There is only us and our light. As we are all flawed, we suffer from trauma, not only from others, but especially from the internal struggles from compartmentalizing failure. Free will means that we and we alone are left to our own designs to choose who we will be. The Phantom Thieves, though tenacious, wallow in self-pity until they learn to embrace individuality and stake a claim to their dispositions. They learn to let go of the things they cannot change, understanding that, as a wise man once said, real generosity for the future lies in giving all to the present, never looking back or too far in front of them. They learn to let go, because if you hold on, life won't change.
Be enslaved by such things as human relations or past selves, and so your heart is always free.
Like in life, there is nothing fundamental, only the instrumental. There are two sides to a coin, two faces to a card, a joker and a fool. Consider the subtle change in melody and tempo and no more what-ifs, and the accompanying mood.
Oh, I'm downright priceless to the Phantom Thieves.
People come as they go. Some people may stay with you though.
consider the Dance of Death, where the vibrant Sumire does acrobatics atop her sister's gravesite. It's a beautiful moment with a heartrending undertone that foreshadows a grim and shocking twist of events, a brilliant double entendre that most players will miss. Kasumi Yoshizawa is the most delightful character I've met in a game. She had me at senpai.
Let's do this, senpai!
Always cheerful, smiling bright as her bow tie and ribbons, politely and affectionately, calling Joker senpai whenever they meet. She is joy. She seems almost too good to be true.
Do I look weird?
How could a person be so bright? When her secret is revealed, it is heartbreaking, not only for the circumstances surrounding the accident, but in the dramatic way that Sumire realizes that she is not who she thinks she is. Her light-hearted disposition dissolves into a somber, sorrowful acceptance speech. Sumire was consumed by feelings of inadequacy, unable to accept her perceived mediocrity. This led her to being jealous of her sister Kasumi, who, by throwing herself in harm's way, makes the ultimate sacrifice so that Sumire can live and learn. The genius is that in doing this, Kasumi one-ups her sister once more, proving that even in death, she's an inspiration, while Sumire considers herself to be a loser. To Sumire, this means not only is she inherently inferior to her sister, but now she is forever indebted to Kasumi for saving her from herself, an almost unbearable anxiety. From this, Sumire suffers the worst trauma out of all of the Phantom Thieves, because she grapples not only with survivor's guilt and remorse, but with the cognitive dissonance, as there is a part of her that doesn't want to undo her costly mistake, because of the fear and doubt of living as her true self. If she can't beat her sibling rival, she would rather be Kasumi. This adds a whole other layer of complexity and a moral dilemma that is central to the thesis of Persona 5 Royal and Sumire as a character, making her, along with Akechi, perhaps the most fascinating character study in the game. The high point of the story for me was when Kasumi/Sumire, the heart and soul of Royal, exclaims, "I am Kasumi Yoshizawa," upon awakening her persona, a necessary development, a rebellion against the voice of derision and self-doubt in her moment of darkness. These words are triumphant, until the knowledge of their true meaning is revealed and the feeling turns to sadness. Kasumi's evolution from Sandrian is a metaphor for the princess living in bliss until the clock strikes midnight and the fairy tale fractures, which allegorically happens on 1-2 in-game. The concept of personas is clear. We all have insecurities that we hide behind metaphorical masks, and each member of the Phantom Thieves has to come to terms with self-loathing, loneliness, and more on the way to personal growth. But no one wears a bigger mask than Sumire. That her better nature takes her to a place where she can confront the truth and find peace within is proof of her courage and status as heroine. If Sumire seems too perfect, this is intentional. It's fan service, doubling as a brilliant plot device, setting us up for emotional impact, juxtaposing the ideal and the real. Sumire is like Cinderella, as most people know, but there's another pair of direct references that Sumire/Kasumi has in other media, and they are worth pointing out. Do you know about Mulholland Drive and Vertigo? If not, please watch these films, as they are unforgettable portraits of tragic characters, vulnerable women who struggle with identity like Sumire. In Mulholland Drive, we follow Betty, who lives out her fantasy as a successful actress who found love in the city of dreams, only to wake up and realize that she is in fact Diane, the complete opposite of Betty. The same goes with Judy, who pretends to be Madeline in order to fool the man investigating her, only to end up falling in love with him as he falls in love with her, and becoming Madeline. Judy is not playing a role so much as she is actualizing some new version that exists in between herself and the character she pretends as. This is true also of Sumire, who in actualizing herself to be Kasumi is in fact neither, but an amalgamation, a composite of the two girls. Sumire, unlike those two femme fatales, goes beyond her painful past to reach a new horizon, which makes her story more inspiring and hopeful than the others. So from now on, please don't call Kasumi/Sumire a Mary Sue, even though they are, in part, that. Instead, think of Madeline and Judy or Betty and Diane. Sumire is a complex character that survives her tragedy to redeem herself in the end. Maruki evolves from a likable, unassuming protagonist into one of the most compelling antagonists in video game history. The child psychologist is a sort of anti-villain, as he pursues a truly noble and altruistic goal of eliminating hardship, but using dubious and nearsighted methods to satisfy his messiah complex. During his boss fight, the anthem "Throw Your Mask Away" by Lyn speaks from his perspective in its swaying, bittersweet tone to persuade the protagonist to throw your mask away. It is during this masterful, moving sequence that the heroes oppose their mentor, a father figure to many of the Phantom Thieves, as he attempts to challenge their virtuous belief in the greater good. Essentially, Maruki persuades them he loves them so much that they ought to accept his vision for peace, except on his own terms, a game to be played according to his rules. Maruki's argument is more profound than the God of Control, who views humans to be simple-minded and frail, flawed and corruptible, and that the world and its inherent entropy should reset to zero. Maruki is more aligned with Igor's thinking. Humans can be their best selves if the paths that they are started on are straight and narrow, fair and balanced. Why strive if you can have it all? The argument against the Phantom Thieves is thus: the learning experience doesn't have to be separate from the winning experience, as no one should have to experience loss to learn the meaning of success. It's a sound argument to make, and a true statement, objectively speaking. Where his thinking goes sideways is by failing to consider that sometimes the journey is the more important part, because the journey is the test of determination that allows the better nature of the individual to manifest, which we see throughout the story during the awakenings and confidant links. In Maruki's world, you could be happy, but would it really be of your own choosing? How would you know that you arrived where you should be in life? Against the alternatives. Where was the time to assess the situation? When did you have a choice or options? Where some doors close, others open. Even in a world of randomness, and perhaps only in this world, there is a degree of choice, and that choice is what separates the good intention of Maruki's world, the ideal, with the thieves' preference, the real. Out of the volatility in life, chances are created, and out of chances, with preparation, we make our own luck. Consider some prime examples with Joker and, of course, Akechi. Akechi and Joker are established as opposite sides of the same coin, both being given wild cards and both being wrongly impacted by Shido. Of course, Akechi's life is more unfair, because he was born with a disadvantage, unlike everyone else in the story. His father abandoned his family and shamed his mother, which in the culture of Japan meant he was to be cast aside. Although Akechi was brilliant and talented, adored by thousands, by reinventing himself as the detective prince, he couldn't see his own reflection clearly. Joker is the full arcana, but not in the true sense of the word. The fool, in this sense, means that Joker has the ability to bypass the absurd, having virtually nothing to lose by partaking in the rebellion once he makes his way to Shujin. He has already been stripped of his good name, and so he resets to zero as the God of Control intended. He becomes unpredictable. He is condemned to be free, but he still has to make the correct choices to save himself and the world, opposite of the path chosen by Akechi. It's Akechi who is the literal fool. Being the Justice Arcana, he fails to live up to his principles by doing Shido's bidding, all in an elaborate attempt to exact revenge. This is why he is envious of Joker, though they are similar. Joker had less baggage to carry with him. Joker had less sense of self-righteousness to hold him down. It was Joker that ultimately wins the game and reverses the fortunes, pulling the ultimate Uno reverse card on his rival, making Akechi the real fool by his failure to let go of his pride, thus carrying him down a path of self-destruction. This is why the third semester presents a brilliant arc for Akechi, not because it gives him redemption, but because it reaffirms his core identity, his value of personal justice, by rebelling against the authority that dared to reconstruct his past. It's not about doing right by everyone else, but it is about doing right by himself, by not playing the fiddle to another conductor's set of rules. This is why he likes the jazz club so much. He wants to live life out in the sound of his own music, not to be part of Maruki's symphony. For the second time in the story, Akechi accepts his fate, intervening to save Joker and the others, and refusing to live a life that isn't on his own terms. After all, what is the difference in the world chosen for him by Maruki rather than the one that was chosen for him by Shido and the God of Control? It still wouldn't be of his agency, and to him, that's not a life worth living. Maruki's world would be limbo. Akechi would rather live in an interesting hell than a boring heaven. There are also great examples with Makoto, who was her father's favorite and his heir apparent, aspiring to be even more successful than Sai, becoming the queen in her family's hierarchy. But Makoto was supposed to be the queen. She becomes the student council president by pushing herself to get there, because she needs to have something of her own, something earned, not given. It's by a combination of her getting her own medicine from Kanashiro's extortion and by being consumed by her own self-loathing for being a pushover that she is driven into the arms of the gang and learns to be a better individual by finally finding acceptance from others and from within. She laments on how she used blackmail to get what she wanted, that out of her loneliness and insecurity, her inability to relate to other people, she became self-centered, absorbed, contrary to her true justice-oriented nature. There's Lady An, who partially lost her innocence, being made the object of Kamoshida's twisted desires. Consider An's confession, her cry for help to Joker at their first meeting, a brilliant example of character development and maturity in storytelling, setting the tone for the rest of the narrative, one that is as unpredictable as any. All she wanted to do was to be respected as a fashion model and be valued as a caring friend, not to be put on a pedestal for the perverts. If Kamoshida never happened, I might have really enjoyed my time in high school with Shio, she says. An's design isn't overly sexualized, but rather a way for her to subvert her attractiveness and turn it outward against those that would try to oppress her. Her costume, a symbol of a dominatrix, is her taking back control over her own image as a strong woman. It's here that Persona 5 Royal subverts the superhero tropes, becoming the best example of superhero media ever made. The Phantom Thieves have awesome powers, but in the end, their greatest gift is their ability of introspection. They can help others to save themselves, and to them, that is the whole point. To lead by example so that others can see the light they reflect. By reflecting light, we shine perspective onto others to help them forge their unique personas. That's why Persona 5 Royal is so inspiring. We learn a lot from the characters as they learn from each other. It's not about error, but it is about trial. There are moments of pain when the characters stumble, but they are ultimately triumphant because they never give up and never submit. That's how we each forge individuality. Persona 5 Royal is all about free will, and that means self-actualization and even forgiveness. The third semester is not only the best part of the game, but the entire reason for making the game that not only reaffirms these themes, but perfectly exemplifies them through the prism of Sumire, Akechi, and the others. The characters learn to accept their true selves and move onward despite life's imperfections, and in doing so, they mature before our eyes. The third semester is a great deal more convincing than the God of Control, because the characters persevere in a battle of man versus himself, a conscious choice to make the most out of our future on our own terms. I have to comment on the ending of Persona 5 Royal, specifically the inclusion of Maruki, the Sumi Goodbye scene, and Joker seeing his reflection. Regarding Maruki, it is poetic to see him as a cab driver, as he spent his whole life as a psychologist, listening to other people's problems and trying to give them direction. That's precisely what cab drivers do, so it seems that in an innocuous way, he is still finding a way to help people. When you bid farewell to Sumire, she seems to be less enthusiastic, though not indifferent, to Joker and Morgana at the train station. There's one line of dialogue that she gives, with a cheerful smile.
You taught me to keep my head up, didn't you?
Joker then smiles back, pleased. This is actually a brilliant exchange that shows that Sumire has matured and mellowed. Everything the Phantom Thieves did for her, especially Joker, is, to quote a great film, beyond evaluation. She doesn't say more than she needs to because she has already said everything. Joker taught her to believe in herself, and now she does. Some interpret this as an inconsistency, given the lack of her usual cheerful disposition. They expect her to run into Joker's arms and exclaim, "Senpai!"
Senpai!
This would have been unrealistic. The tone that they set was proper, a bittersweet goodbye to one of our favorite heroes. It's designed to make you think. That and the cops don't know who she is, so it's best for her to keep a low profile as they pursue Joker. One confusing aspect, though, is why is her hair in a ponytail again? I think this is simply because she was returning from practice given her attire and gym bag, which means she was working hard to fulfill her dream shared with Kasumi. She also mentioned something about putting her hair back into that style during the end of her confidant, which I think means she's just becoming comfortable being her true self. This isn't supposed to imply that Sumire is reverting to living as Kasumi. I think it means she is just honoring her sister in a natural way, while at the same time having reached self-acceptance. Another piece of poetry is the last scene with our hero on the subway train. Joker sees a reflection of his Phantom Thief self in the glass, surprising him, as he has forgotten in all the excitement that he doesn't need those glasses anymore. In what I consider to be one of Joker's finest moments, he finally finds his own freedom, taking off the mask and sighing relief that he's back again. We all know the best girl in Persona 5 Royal is the singer Lyn Inaizumi, known as Lyn to English audiences. Lyn is one of the best singers I've ever heard, and the music in Persona 5 Royal is unquestionably the greatest video game soundtrack ever made, and even then some.
How about this?
You can't possibly top this.
A huge part of the atmosphere of Persona 5 Royal is created through sound. It creates a powerful mood for all occasions, with the lyrics giving meaning to the story and the story giving meaning to the lyrics. Every song has a different theme, a different genre, and a different idea. Consider the exuberance of Tokyo Daylight, which plays when you bust out of class at Shujin High, or walk around the exquisite rendition of Shibuya and Yanganjaya. By the way, Shujin is a brilliant setting because it is an anagram of a Japanese word for prison. And of course, all schools are like prisons from which we hope to graduate from when our rehabilitation is done. To witness the blue butterfly and the guardian angel Lavenza in the Velvet Room. To better understand your confidence while the nostalgic music plays. To battle to rivers in the desert and change hearts. And end the night by walking home in the rain after a long endgame day to Lyn Inaizumi's inimitable vocals is a priceless experience. I wrote about how important fictional heroes are, because they reciprocate meaning to us that we give to them. The Phantom Thieves are some of the greatest heroes in all of fiction, because they feel like so many of us, and in some ways they feel like the people we wish we could be. Even Akechi, like his parallel to the Featherman, was in the end one of us all along. Playing Persona 5 Royal enlightens and inspires the player to be a better person. Rated M for a masterpiece. This is my story with playing the game. I thought I knew it all and had seen it all in video game history. That was before I discovered the gem that is Persona 5 Royal, a game that changed the course of my career and reinvigorated my passion for gaming. It was on April 2nd of 2020. It wouldn't have been possible without the free $60 given to me by a dear friend to purchase the game. I thought it was an April Fool's prank, but it turned out to be one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. That free $60 might as well have been all of the money in the world. That is the value of true art. And if you feel the same, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.